Anyone who spends enough time deep in the woods learns to recognize the silence. It is a heavy, unnatural void that drops over a forest right before an unseen threat decides to reveal itself. Take the backcountry of Olympic National Park. It is an endless stretch of beautiful, indifferent terrain. Two experienced hikers pushed several miles completely off the mapped trails here, putting themselves completely out of reach of any potential help. They eventually broke through the tree line into a small natural clearing. Sitting right in the center of that clearing was a campsite. It was an exact mirrored replica of their own setup. The hikers found their own gear reflected back at them, the same specific brand of tent and the same two distinctive backpacks. However, every piece of equipment in the replica camp had been violently slashed to ribbons, exposing the dark, empty interior of the tent. Before they could process the scene, the ambient hum of the forest broke. A sharp, distinct whistle cut through the air. It was a specific pitch, the exact sound of the dog whistle one of the hikers carried. It originated from deep within the dense tree line. Hearing a highly specific, intimate piece of your own life played back in an isolated environment immediately shatters your sense of reality. The context is entirely wrong. Then the voices started. Echoing from the dark trees, the hikers heard an exact playback of a conversation they had shared hours earlier. The tone and cadence matched perfectly, but the voices were entirely flat. They lacked any trace of actual human emotion. Panic overrode their training. Both hikers abandoned their packs, their shelter, and all their essential survival gear, fleeing blindly through the dense woods to escape the source of those sounds. The boundary of safety dissolves the moment you realize the wilderness is an active observer, reflecting your exact behavior back at you with terrifying precision. While distant, psychological manipulation is terrifying in heavy timber. A threat can also use an exposed environment to physically close the distance. The Cairngorms National Park in Scotland is dominated by massive, exposed valleys. When the dense rolling fog moves in, it eliminates all visual confirmation of safety, leaving a hiker with zero physical shelter and zero line of sight. To capture wildlife sounds, a photographer relied on parabolic audio isolation. A dish microphone captures distant audio in a tight cone, while noise-canceling headphones block local sounds. The photographer was tracking the distant rustling. Then the audio abruptly stopped, leaving artificial silence. A second later, the microphone picked up a new sound, a slow, wet heartbeat and heavy breathing. Based on audio levels, whatever made that noise was inches in front of the lens. He was staring straight ahead into a completely empty wall of thick white fog. His eyes registered absolute stillness, while the equipment insisted a massive creature was in his face. He reached up and frantically ripped off the noise-canceling headphones. The heavy, wet breathing didn't fade. Without the headphones, he could hear the sound originating from directly over his right shoulder. His technology had been weaponized. His senses became a blindfold, distracting him perfectly, while the threat breached his perimeter. We rely on the physical structure of a shelter to grant us peace of mind. 4 walls and a locked door create the illusion that we are entirely separated from the outside world. Deep in the Adirondack Mountains, a solo traveler found himself pinned down inside an old cabin during a heavy winter snowstorm. The environment outside was sub-zero and completely unsurvivable. At 2 a.m., the cabin's aging generator sputtered and died. The heating system failed, plunging the single room into freezing temperatures and absolute sensory-depriving darkness. Outside, the howling wind suddenly dropped to a dead calm. In that new silence, the traveler heard the slow, agonizing creak of a single wooden floorboard. It was coming from inside the locked room. He flicked on his heavy flashlight and swept the beam toward the entrance. The deadbolt was still engaged, but the perimeter had failed. Muddy, freezing snow from the storm had been forcefully packed inward, shoved under the bottom weather stripping of the heavy wooden door. The flashlight beam caught the start of a trail. Large, wet footprints, thick with melted snow and mud, moved deliberately away from the door. and tracked straight across the interior rug. He followed the trail of mud with the light, tracing the exact path of the entity in the dark. The footprints moved past the small table, past the dead stove, and stopped precisely at the very edge of his bed. He kept the beam locked on the floor, searching for the rest of the trail. There were no tracks leading back to the door. There was no second set of prints moving away. The boundary between civilization and the unknown is a fragile illusion. Eventually, the wild moves past the tree line and steps directly into our most intimate spaces.